Raise your right hand. You solemnly swear or affirm testimony you're about to give and the cause now pending before this court will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Just have a seat right there and pull the microphone up so everybody can hear you.
Today's case takes us all the way to Fort Worth, Texas, where 37-year-old Gregory Glenn Biggs was born and raised. The people in his life described him as a friendly, hardworking, and very loving man. He was a husband and became a father to his son Brandon Biggs, but later divorced, and Gregory became a self-employed bricklayer. Sources state that sometime after, Gregory began dating a woman who started having financial troubles, and unfortunately, it took a toll on him. He would loan her money to help her out, and it led to him not making his truck payments, which he relied on for doing work. He eventually had his vehicle repossessed and also lost his home soon after, as he was not able to do work without his truck. Gregory was also diagnosed with schizophrenia and bipolar disorder and was taking medications to help him live a balanced life. However, with the loss of his income and possessions, he could no longer afford his medications, and his mental instability made it difficult for him to secure a job. Consequently, he stayed in a homeless shelter while working as a local mason, and according to his family members, he was on his way to getting his life back on track after a series of unfortunate events. However, he would sadly never get this opportunity. On an early Friday morning, 25-year-old Shantae Joanne Mallard was enjoying a night of fun with a friend and headed out to Joe's Big Bamboo nightclub. Throughout the night, Shantae and her friend were sharing drugs and drinking while partying. Around 2:30 a.m., they both decided to leave the nightclub and head home. Shantae's friend noticed that Shantae was a bit too intoxicated to drive, so she drove to her own house, leaving Shantae to drive herself back home. Shantae was driving on the highway and only less than a mile away from her house when she hit a man with her car. That man was 37-year-old Gregory Biggs. He was walking alongside the highway before the force of the crash sent him over the hood and into her windshield, where he became lodged and critically injured. Shantae stopped briefly and attempted to dislodge the man's body from her car. She knew he was still alive, and Shantae was a trained nurse's aide. However, she also knew that she was in no position to be behind the wheel, and she was at fault for the collision. Her self-preservation overtook the stranger's life. Instead of calling the police or seeking medical help, Shantae gave up, drove her vehicle home, and parked it in her garage, with Gregory still lodged in her windshield. She left him bleeding heavily, conscious, and begging for help. Over the next several hours, Shantae continually checked in on Gregory to see if he had finally bled out. She said that she apologized to him, but never made any attempt to help him. After many hours, Gregory finally lost consciousness and eventually bled out. The following day, Shantae enlisted her ex-boyfriend to help dispose of Gregory's body after telling him what had happened. He tried touching Gregory's body with a rake to see if he was alive, but he did not move. Her ex-boyfriend then decided that they would not bury the body, but instead put it somewhere where the victim's family can find him and bury him. Both of them and one of his cousins waited until it was dark. Then they took Gregory to a nearby park and dumped him there. In an attempt to destroy evidence from the crash, they set the vehicle on fire. The day after that, Gregory's body was discovered in Cobb Park. The Fort Worth police officers at the scene noted that the victim's shoes and socks were missing, which indicated that a vehicle may have run into the victim. They also noted that there was no blood at the scene. Thus, they concluded that the victim had been moved to the park and placed where he could be found. An autopsy later revealed that Gregory suffered a near total amputation of his left leg and that he bled to death from this injury. An investigation soon began, but there was little evidence and little help that the case would be solved, as hit and runs are typically challenging cases for evidence. But soon enough, the Fort Worth police would get the answers they were waiting for. 4 months later, police got a call from a woman who said she might have information regarding a hit-and-run victim. Miranda Daniels said that she had been at a party when an acquaintance, Shantae Mallard, had made some concerning statements to her. She noted that Mallard had said, "I hit this white man," and had been laughing about the situation. It was a strong lead, and police decided to bring Shantae in for questioning. A search warrant was also issued to search Shantae's home for evidence. They located her car in the garage, which had significant damage to the hood and the front bumper. Additionally, it was missing the windshield entirely. They found the seats of the vehicle in the backyard had been extensively damaged by fire damage. Officers discovered a dried pool of blood soaked into the concrete floor in the garage. There was also significant blood evidence on the inside and outside of the vehicle. There was a lot of blood evidence in the garage, far more than anything other than homicide could explain. On February 26, 2002, Shantae Mallard was arrested and charged initially with failing to stop and render aid. She was released on bond the same day. However, once officers got a report back from Gregory's autopsy that ruled his death a homicide, Shantae was arrested again on a murder charge, as well as tampering with evidence. The 2 men that helped Shantae were also arrested and charged with tampering with evidence. They both pled guilty and each received 10 years and agreed to testify against her. Shantae pled guilty to tampering with evidence, but pleaded not guilty to the murder charges. Her trial began in June of 2003. She apologized to the court and Gregory's son, Brandon, saying, "I am so sorry, Brandon. I am so sorry for what I've caused your family, and I am so sorry for the pain I have put my family through. I am so sorry for the crime I've done to society. I really am very sorry." Brandon Biggs eventually publicly forgave Shantae on the stand. He said, "I still want to extend my forgiveness to Shantae Mallard and let her know that the Mallard family is in my prayers. If love is what makes the world go round, compassion makes it sincere." Shantae maintained that she had panicked and was afraid of getting arrested. Several experts testified that Gregory could have survived, with the medical examiner in the case saying that if Shantae took Gregory to the hospital, he would have recovered from his injuries. But instead, Shantae had shown a remarkable disregard for human life by concealing him until he bled out, a process that left him suffering for many hours. The jury took less than an hour to deliberate. Shantae was found guilty and sentenced to 50 years in prison for the murder charge and 10 years for tampering with evidence. In response to Brandon's mercy, convicted murderers from across the country raised $10,000 as a college scholarship and had it presented at a ceremony to Mr. Biggs, who at the time was a 20-year-old pastoral ministry sophomore at Southwestern Assemblies of God University in Waxahachie, Texas. Since finishing his sentence, Shantae's ex-boyfriend, who was in prison for helping move Gregory's body, has been in and out of prison on firearms and drug-related charges. Shantae remains behind bars in Gatesville, Texas. Her projected release date is March 3rd, 2052, although she is eligible for parole in 2027. May Gregory Biggs rest in paradise and the Biggs family reach healing. And thank you all for watching.